Welcome to Nada Yada Island.
Next on Nada Yada Island.
I knew I deserved so much more, so I left. I finally switched to Metro and got what I was looking for.
Get one line for only $25 a month with AutoPay. Just bring your phone to Metro and experience all the data you want on the largest 5G network. That's Nada Yada Yada, only at Metro by T-Mobile.
First month is $30. Bring your number and ID. Offer not available if with T-Mobile or with Metro in the past 180 days.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 678 of the Duke Basketball Roundup, the DBR Podcast. We had quite a contest for the Duke Blue Devils, and we're going to be talking about it, the victory over the SMU Mustangs. But first, time for introductions. I'm Jason Evans. I'll be your host. I'm joined by Donald Wine. Donald, how you doing this fine Sunday morning after a big Saturday victory for Duke?
Big Saturday victory for Duke. It was great. But it was a fun, easy watch, which I think we'll get into, but it wasn't, It didn't feel, it was a nice Saturday afternoon. We're about to get some snow here, hopefully, over the next 24 hours. So it was just a nice Saturday of just like watching Duke, making chili, relaxing, getting all the prep done for what might be a nice snow event here.
You know, Donald, before we get to our recap of the game, I want to just talk about something. We had someone write to us about this, about Duke's KenPom rating. And Duke remains after this game, and I'm going to get to the game itself, but this is a big general thing, not specific to this one game. Duke remains number 2 in KenPom, but they got appreciably stronger in the rankings after this win over SMU. We went from a overall net rating of 32.73 to 35.06, so 32 to 35, which is a big jump. I mean, that's how impressive this win was on the road at SMU. Now,
in most years, Jason, that would bring you up like 10, 12, maybe even 15 places if you were like further down in the table.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say if it wasn't for Auburn just having an outrageous, ridiculous, Auburn's net rating right now is plus 36.6. It's like that's a crazy number. I'm gonna talk about historic numbers in a second. That Auburn number is a crazy number. Duke is now like basically alongside Auburn, and there is quite a gap, a considerable gap to Houston and Tennessee, who are the number 3 and 4 seasons. I want to focus for a second on that 35 plus number that Duke is currently at in KenPom. Duke hasn't finished a season above 35 in KenPom's overall efficiency rankings since the 2001 national champions. In 2001, we finished with a 37.3, and frankly, a lot of that was because we ran through the NCAA tournament. When a team wins the tournament, they almost always boost their KenPom ranking along the way, and that Duke team really, really did that year. But again, since 2001, Duke hasn't been above a 35 when the season ended. Now, I did a bit of digging, and the best that I can tell, this is the highest in-season number because, Pomeroy does his rankings after every game, after every day. This is the highest in-season ranking since 2019. The Zion, RJ, Cam, Trey team. That team in mid-February at one point was plus 35.8, basically. Just a little bit better than this current Duke team right now. And then Zion had the blown shoe game. I don't want to talk anymore about that. But that team kind of faded a bit down the stretch. They didn't finish anywhere close to a plus 35. To give folks a perspective on what a plus 35 is like, by the way, which is, again, this current team is above a plus 35 in KenPom. The 2010 national champs finished the season at plus 33. The 2015 national champs were plus 32.5. The 2022 Final Four team, here's some real perspective. That team that made the Final Four in 2022, that team was just a plus 25 on the season. Again, Duke's currently at a plus 35. Most years, even a really good year, a Duke team's in the mid to upper 20s. Being above 30 is a big deal It means you're a major national title contender, if not a national title winner. And this team is currently plus 35 in the efficiency rankings. And the last word I have on this before we get to the game, and Donald, obviously you can comment on this a bit, but Pomeroy now projects that Duke will finish the season with an ACC record of 19-1. That would be a record for anyone in ACC history. No ACC team has ever won 19 regular season games. He also thinks this team, I went and I did it all the percentages. There's a better than 18% chance that Duke wins all their remaining games, that we win out from here. I'm super excited. I didn't think that game against SMU would be as easy as it was. And so I went into a little bit of irrational exuberance kind of time. I apologize. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, there's like a 20% chance that Duke goes undefeated on the rest of the season. That's how good this Duke team is playing right now. It's also how bad the ACC is, but we'll put that aside.
My best friend, when he listened to our preview episode of SMU, he literally texted me in the middle of it and said, quote, "Y'all are really good at making mid teams sound terrifying." And that's our job in a way, right? Like I've always said, like, I never want to be, overly confident about a game. I never want to be like, hey, I also don't want to be at the very end of like, oh, it's 2-0. Like if we don't get out to a 2-0 lead, we're going to lose, right? I want to be stuck in the middle of, hey, here's how a team can beat us. Here's how they're dangerous. Here are the qualities that we possess and how they match up against them. And we kind of talk about in a way where we go, hey, you're trying to learn. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows about Duke, but they may not know about the team we're facing. So we need to tell them, hey, here's the reasons why you need to be worried, right? Here's the reasons why this team can be successful. Here's who they're going to rely on, and here's who we need to shut down. Jason, as we'll talk about in the preview, in the recap, a lot of the guys that we talked about, we shut down. So that's how we won this game so easily, is a lot of the guys who were like, hey, you need to worry about this guy. He can shoot a three. You need to worry about this guy. He's lethal in the paint. We were able to shut all that down. And Jason, I use that as a segue because I think what it has to do with is leadership, both on the team, with the players, and also amongst the coaching staff. Of course, the big news before the game, which came out, 20 minutes before the game started, was that Jon Scheyer did not make the trip due to illness. It is said that he is okay. It's not anything serious. He should be back on the sidelines on Tuesday against Pitt. But that meant Chris Carrawell, the associate head coach, was in charge for this game. And Jason, shout out Chris Carrawell. Shout out the coaching staff. It's very difficult. People just think you can it's a next man up mentality. And sure, there is in a coaching staff, but there's a lot more that has to go with that, because it as we learned after the game, there was a lot of prep that went on where they were kind of like, hey, we'll prep this, but John will be back, so it'll be fine, and he'll take this part. And then on Sunday or late Saturday night, they said, oh, he's not coming. And so he said he had a very sleepless night on Friday night, where they realized that Jon Scheyer was not going to make the trip, that he was in charge, and that all these responsibilities for a head coach laid on him, and some of his role as an associate head coach had to be divvied up amongst the rest of the staff. And that is a very difficult thing to do. I really appreciate it. It's the first time that Jon Scheyer has not been on the sidelines since he took over as head coach. It's the first time that Chris Carrawell has had to step in for anyone, right? There was a couple times where Coach K was sick towards the later end of his career, or had COVID or whatever, and Jon Scheyer took over in those situations. Right. So the idea that he stepped in on fairly, kind of very short notice and was able to put together this game that was so easy to watch is incredible. And the way that he was commanding and that leadership on the sideline was very key and instrumental to this win. I just want to give a big ups to Sewell, friend of the pod, for doing work, because that takes a lot of moxie, and it takes a lot of organization, and it takes a lot of preparation so that you stay ready. So you ain't got to get ready. My man was ready, and it showed on the court.
Yeah, and I just want to take a quick moment, and we're going to play a little bit of sound. The Duke men's basketball Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to call it, feed went ahead and put out this little bit of sound of Sewell walking into the locker room. You won't be able to directly hear it in the sound, but they are throwing water, beer, champagne, whatever it may be, all over that man. I think it's only water.
It's water. Yeah, it's an opposing locker room.
At the start of the video, he just gets absolutely drenched, and he loves every second of it. And then there's a moment where they play a little bit of sound of him addressing the team. Let's have a listen to all of that. It's really great stuff. Have a listen now.
Hey man, I just want to appreciate everybody in this room, man. It was my first time. I ain't gonna even lie. Head coaches go through some. I couldn't sleep last night, you know what I'm saying? But I felt comfortable because everybody in this room had my back, man. I appreciate y'all, man.
By the way, I love, if you couldn't tell, Sewell gets a little choked up there toward the end.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when he pauses, it's because he's feeling it on the inside. But one of the things that I really like about this was apparently John Shire isn't the only person on the team who is sick. That there's a bug running around all of Durham. In fact, I've heard that the
all
hospital,
of the country. Yeah,
right.
It's wintertime that happens.
Yeah, the emergency rooms are full all across Durham, is what I've heard. And I've heard from inside sources that the bug running through the team has a lot of guys feeling under the weather. So far, Shire's the only person who's been sort of knocked to the sidelines. But don't be shocked. Don't be surprised if somehow in the next week or so we end up with a guy who misses a game, perhaps because of this. Because I've heard it's really bad.
Well, we've already had it, right? Spencer Hubbard sat out 2 games. Cameron Sheffield was out for a game, and I know those guys don't play that much. But the idea is that it has reached the team. But Jason, I don't know if you saw the post-game press conference from Sewell. But it was very funny at the beginning. They kind of asked him, "Hey, what was prep like without John there?" And he goes, in part, he goes, our guys with their prep did an excellent job. Coach Lucas had this scouted, and we were prepared. There wasn't really a lot to say. You're thinking, man, do I go and give my Newt Rockne speech? And these guys don't know who Newt Rockne is. I knew they were ready. It was different. A lot of crazy stuff going on, but our guys responded and played a great game today. And they did, Jason. I think, again, it starts at the top, and the way that coaching structure was able to make sure everything was ready. But also it speaks well to our guys and the fact that, we've had people ask us why there hasn't been a named captain on this team. And we've, kind of opined that, hey, if there's a captain to be named, John will name it. But it takes a lot of leadership in that locker room from the players as well to step up and say, hey, let's win this for our guy while our guy is down. And so I think that is everyone on the team there, from the coaches to the players to the managers to the trainers, everybody there has a little bit of leadership in them. And that has really exuded itself when you think about the fact that we have won on the road for the 4th straight time in the ACC by more than double digits, which has never happened before. And that is right there a testament to going into a new gym that they are not familiar with against a new team to the ACC and sending them home very quickly. Going all the way back to the preseason where they said we want people going home at the under 4 timeout knowing that they've lost. Well, the Moody Center was empty at the under 4 timeout because SMU was done at that point.
Yeah. Hey, let's get to the headlines really quickly as we begin diving into this game in more depth. Ryan Fulton wrote to us. He's the guy who wrote to us about those crazy high KenPom numbers. He's the one who drove me down the rabbit hole of looking to see the best in-season KenPom number. So thanks for that, Ryan. But he also gave us a headline. He said, "My Little Ponies, Duke and its devilish defense muzzle the Mustangs." I like that one. Adam Kuhn gave us a good He gave us a good headline. And this is going to be a tough one to read, especially because I'm apparently having trouble speaking right now.
Our reading comprehension is gone today. That's okay.
It's not going well, yeah. So Adam Kuhn's headline was this: Shire sits out sick, but Devils still stampede SMU. That's like a tongue twister, man. I'm not going to read that one twice.
That was good.
Yeah, thank you. Courtney Kruger, Duke rides the Mustangs like a Walmart pony.
Anyone got any change?
I cracked up at that one. We got a lot of, sort of plays on riding the horses, riding the Mustangs kind of stuff. But I was like, that's the best Walmart pony. Courtney, beautiful, beautiful stuff. And Paula Anderson, gave us another one on that horse theme. This is a really good one. Mustangs corralled and branded with a D. And I wonder if that D means Duke or does it mean defense? It could mean either one because
the defense was doing the branding. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. So great headlines, guys. We really appreciate that. Donald, I wanted to really quick play off of one thing you said about this team being road warriors. Matthew Lofton wrote to us and pointed out that this is the first time that Duke has ever won its first 4 true road games by double digits. You alluded to that a moment ago.
Mm-hmm.
But Matthew went even further. He mentioned that in 1935-36, Duke had won several road games in a row, but then they only beat Catholic by less than 10 points. And in 1950-51, they would have gotten that double-digit streak to up to 4, but they only beat Haynes Hosiery by less than 10 points. For the game against Haynes Hosiery to be replayed.
I was there. You weren't there? It was a good game down to the very end.
1951. Oh my gosh. But anyway, Matthew's the one who really pointed out to us the fact that Duke has won its first 4 road games by double-digit points. First 3 ACC road games by double-digit points. I mean, that's really shocking to see and a sign of how great this team is. What else do you want to start on in the good, buddy?
I want to start with the fact that we shot well throughout the game, and I know the first half, like towards the end of the first half, it looked like it was a little dicey. But if you think about the whole game, we shot over 50% from the floor. We shot 53%. We shot almost 41% from 3, and we shot 75% from the line. Again, 75 to 80%. That's what we're asking for here from the line. We can't do 100% like we did against Virginia Tech all the time. So 75 to 80%, if you're in that wheelhouse, you're doing just fine. And I think, again, it started with the fact that we started out early. We jumped out to a 17-7 lead in the first half. In the second half, we went on a 13-5 run to start that half. And that really put SMU out of it. And I think, again, it was shooting at opportune times. We went, obviously, to our guy, Cooper Flagg, who had another 24-point output yesterday. But I also think that it was scoring coming from a lot of different places. I'm going to talk about a lot of guys in this segment that I thought stepped up and played a lot better than we've seen them play lately, and in different ways on the floor. And again, the tempo was set on defense very early on. Yedagolu, I think is how we pronounced it on the broadcast, went up for a shot and Manman volleyball swatted it. When I tell you how quickly that was up on the internet by Duke men's basketball, I don't think they waited for the next possession. They were like, man, volleyball swat. But again, that set the tone. He hit it so hard that the guys didn't even bother going after it. They're just like, no. Like, reset your offense, do that again. And sure enough, they went and they had another terrible shot. So that sort of thing where you can kind of win a possession by like volleyball swatting the ball down floor and making them reset just because you can. It's almost like orcas playing with their food. Like they're like, oh, we're just gonna throw the seal up in the air and play with it, and maybe when we're finished playing with it, maybe they'll be tired. And that's what happened. Like SMU was trying so hard, and there were times where they definitely made some shots, but our defense really begat our offense, and I really enjoyed. I think that's what made it enjoyable, is that our defense was able to suffocate them at times, and when we went on these long runs, it was it turned out to be like what, a 35-6 run or something like that, where it wasn't like 12 points in a row, 13 points in a row. It was like 6-7 points in a row. They'd make a basket, and then we'd get upset at that. We'd go on another eight score run. And I think that's what it was, is we slowly but surely, we started out pretty good, and then we were able to maintain it when SMU had their surges.
Look, you know me, I like to start with the big themes, then I get to the players. So keeping on the big themes from at first, you mentioned Duke shot really well. I think a lot of them shooting really well was sharing the ball. Duke had 22 assists on 33 field goals. That's a 67% assist rate. That's just outstanding. Sion James had 7 assists in the first half. Duke also, part of sharing the ball was protecting the ball. We only had 7 total turnovers in this game. Only one of them in the first half. A lot of what I saw, to me, this game was Duke building a very sizable lead early on and then just kind of cruising and building on it and building on it. But you talked about it being a no stress, low stress game. That was because they built this early lead. They never gave the ball away. They shared the ball really well. Assist to turnover ratio of 3.1. That's our best assist to turnover ratio on the season. Duke, by the way, over the past 3 games is averaging better than 20 assists per game. We've got a lot of different guys scoring. We're getting a lot of good shots because we share the ball so damn well. And I'd want to mention, we got a great email, Dave Jordan, who sent us some really good stuff. He says he was watching the game with his friend Ross, and that Ross said to him this is hysterical. He goes, I'm calling it the Knipple to Malawach alley-oop combo. That's going to be called the Con Man. I'm like, that's brilliant. Con
because it bamboozles the opponent. I love it.
It does. That's the Con Man. That's really clever. I thought that was great. I just wanted to shout that out as we're talking about great passing, because Duke found Man in the post on multiple occasions. And then the other thing you talked about that I wanted to play off of was the defense. I kept thinking SMU is going to make a run. SMU is going to make. I really thought that this SMU team was better. I'm not going to say they're bad. They're not bad at all. They're a very good ACC team. They can still absolutely contend for a top 4 double bye in the ACC. There's no question about that. But I just kept thinking they're going to make a run. They're going to make a run. They never made a run. And the reason they never made a run was because it was just too difficult to get anything sustained against our defense. You mentioned Malawach spiking the ball to half court. He was intimidating the whole game. I thought Sion James was absolutely great on Boopy Miller. If you notice, Boopy, for the most part, scored when Sion wasn't guarding him. By the way, speaking of that, whoever Cooper was guarding, just disappears. I don't know what happens, but whoever Cooper Flagg guards, that person is not part of the offensive plan for the opposing team. I just noticed it again and again. I'm like, oh wait, what? Who's Cooper guarding? Because that guy's just not involved in the play at all. It's kind of amazing. Traore and Cross, I noted, hit some really tough shots for SMU. Full props to them for that. If they hadn't hit some really difficult shots, SMU doesn't even get to 60 points in this game. They came into this contest averaging 87 points per game. Think on that.
It's like 4th in the country or something like that, right?
Yeah. They're averaging 87 points per game. They ended up with 62, and they struggled to get to 62. It's not a surprise. That was their low mark for the season. They've scored more than 62 in every single game this year, including when they played against Virginia, and Virginia basically holds onto the ball, doesn't let you have the ball at all. We hounded them again and again into bad, difficult shots. They couldn't get anyone free on the perimeter. This was a team we mentioned in the preview. They hit 39% from 3. In this game, they only hit 23.8%, just 5 of 21 on 3-pointers. SMU is a team that loves to push the pace. We talked about that in the preview. They came into this game averaging 16 fast break points per game. 16 points per game on fast breaks. That's top 20 in the country. Donald, they left this game having scored just 5 fast break points on Duke. The announcers for the CW just kept on talking all game long. It was like they were in awe. They just kept on saying, this Duke team is just so big and long. And they didn't have anything more to say than that. Every so often they just kind of go, I just can't even tell you how big and long this Duke team is.
Yeah. I will say, Jason, there's 3 guys that you mentioned on the preview that could shoot well from 3. You mentioned the team as a whole shot, close to 40% from 3, but there was 3 guys that we were able to worry about, right? Matt Cross was the 3rd best shooter on the team at 39% or something like that.
Yeah.
And he hit 2. He hit that first one. The very first play of the game was the only lead that they had, was 20 seconds into the game. And then he hit one later on in the game that didn't really matter. Boopy Miller had 3 threes, and he was the guy that shot 28% from the floor. And we said if Boopy can get hot from 3, that might give him a chance.
I knew it was going to happen.
We went 3 for 7, right? Those are the 2 guys that shot 3s, that made 3s all game, right? Chuck Harris, who was the leading one, I think who's shooting close to 50% from 3, went 0 for 4. And Kario Oquendo, who I think was shooting 40% from 3, hit 0 for 3. So the fact that we were able to limit the guys who were doing the most damage from beyond the arc, and yes, they didn't take that many, at least entering this game. They weren't a team that took a lot of threes, but they made them. But the guys who usually make them made none of them. And again, when you're a team that's trying to upset someone, you look for the magic from your magicians. And when the magicians aren't pulling rabbits out of the hat, it's very difficult to entertain a crowd. It's very difficult to keep them motivated to really root for you. And it also means for us, oh, you guys don't have any magic today. Cool. Well, we do. And again, that defense has been put in every carry-on overhead storage from here to Durham.
It travels.
And they bring it on every trip. And that has been the real thing here. And the fact that we were able to key in on those guys and lock them down meant that any lead that we took became an insurmountable lead very quickly because those guys weren't able to shoot SMU back into it.
Hey, let's get to some individuals. I said I wanted to do the big themes, then the players, and we will start with Mr. Cooper Flagg, who was frankly just borderline unstoppable. I mean, there's no way to say it other than that. So he had scored 24 points with about 15 minutes left in this contest, and then he eased his foot off the gas. I'm telling you that if he wanted to, he could have easily gotten to 30. This game becomes his fourth double-double where he scores more than 20 points, 20-point double-doubles. The fourth one of the season? Are you kidding me? And by the way, college basketball, everyone not named Duke, be afraid. Be very afraid because Cooper is finally hitting some three-pointers. He had a dreadful start to the season shooting from the outside. Well, now over his past 4 games, he's 7 of 14 from 3. He's 50% in his past 4 games, Donald. His average on the season is only up to 30%. I strongly suspect he's going to end the year hitting better than 35% of his threes, so he's got some more big games in him. And oh, by the way, have you noticed his free throw shooting? Over his last 6, here's the number. Over his last 6 games, Cooper Flagg, who gets to the free throw line a lot, is 27 of 29. That's 93%.
It helps.
Man, what you going to do? You can't stop him. You just can try and foul him, and now he's hitting 93% from the line. Forget it. Forget about it.
That's the point, right? He gets to his spots. He's hitting threes now, and when you decide to stop him by fouling, it's just free points for him. And this week he was 100% from the line, and 12 for 12, I think, when you combine it with the Virginia Tech game.
Yep.
So, and the fact that he's pulling down rebounds, he's on defense, he's doing block shots, he's getting steals, he's making jumpers, he's passing the ball. The defense for an opponent has to say, oh, it starts and ends with number 2. And the problem is with Duke, we have so many, guys who can do damage that you can't fully key in on number 2. And that's the biggest mistake you can possibly do because Cooper Flagg will exploit any defense that isn't fully, in his face, right? Like he can have 2-3 guys in his face and he still figures out a way to get to a spot, get to the basket, and either make the basket or get fouled. That's where he's at right now. And after the game, he mentioned that he's just only getting better every single day. If this isn't the best,
man,
then
stop
it. Let's go. Let's go for the rest of the season. But I'm so glad he's on our team because he makes everything around him better. And yeah, even with all the pressure and being the number 1 guy at the top of every scouting report, he's still going out and doing 24 and 11.
Hey, as we hearken back to I think it was the preview, or maybe it was the previous episode, I talked about the fact that Tyrese Proctor has struggled a bit from the perimeter lately. That earlier in the season he was hitting close to 50%, and he only had 6 3-pointers made in his past 5 games. And I was like, oh, it'd be nice to get the real Tyrese back. Hello, we got the real Tyrese back. He back. He goes 4 of 7 from the 3-point line in this game. That's a pretty big number there, Donald. And I noticed that Reese is getting in the lane. We talked a little bit about this, but he's getting in the lane better than he has been, than he had been earlier in the season. In fact, on a whole, I thought Duke did a really nice job of penetrating inside. We talked about Sion James getting 7 assists in the first half. A lot of that was him getting inside and then finding guys for open looks. I noticed this game, interestingly enough, especially in the second half, Tyrese Proctor was playing more point guard than we usually see. Like, we get the ball in his hands a fair bit, but it's usually on the wing. He was getting the ball. He was bringing the ball up, getting the ball at the top of the circle and initiating from there, which is, of course, what he did his entire first 2 years at Duke. But this year we had moved him off the ball so much, and I was very intrigued I don't know whether it's maybe Sewell doing things a little differently. I don't know if the team has found something they want to do a little bit differently. I don't know if they're moving Tyrese back to more of a point guard role. But I noticed there were times that he was on the floor with Sion James and with Caleb Foster, not at the same time, but with Sion James or Caleb Foster. And this year, when that combo, when he was with either of those two guys, he was on the wing. In this game, he was playing more of the point. And I think that's a really, really interesting thing to note. The last thing I wanted to mention about Tyrese was for the week, he has 27 points, 8 assists, 5 out of 12 on his three-pointers, perfect from the free throw line. He would absolutely be a player of the week contender. I would be talking Tyrese Proctor up for player of the week if it wasn't for the fact that Cooper Flagg went ham this week. That's just, I mean, when we get to player of the week, Cooper Flagg's numbers are absurd, ridiculous, insane. But I wanted to say to Tyrese Proctor, hey, Tyrese, most of the time you'd be a player of the week contender, buddy. I feel you, but not this week. Sorry.
He had a hell of a week and capped off by this game again, gets back on his horse when it comes to no pun intended with the 3-pointers. And
wait, I love that pun. He got back on
I do, but it wasn't intended.
He got back on his Mustang, baby.
Yeah. Or he drove away. He got the Ford and he was like vroom vroom and get out of there with the Mustang. But I will say this, the thing about him bringing the ball up for point means that we are just that much more unscoutable. Because now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential guys who can bring the ball up at any given point.
Yeah, forget about it, man.
And so it's I can't keep track of it, and neither can another opponent, right? When they're scouting what we do on offense. And again, there's a lot of times where Tyrese Proctor gets the ball in transition. But you mentioned the half court offense, but you've seen a lot of times where some of his assists come where we get the ball on a steal or a rebound. He's able to get the ball very quickly on the outlet and do a quick dump off to whoever's further down floor for them to get the point. So I love what I'm seeing from him. I love that these guys kind of talk with each other and kind of go, because there was a point where Caleb Foster was in the game, Tyrese Proctor was in the game, Sion James was in the game, and Proctor was bringing the ball up, right? You have 3 guys who can bring the ball up, and that's not counting Cooper Flagg. And you have 3 primary ball handlers, and Tyrese was the one bringing it up and initiating the offense and getting assists. I like the fact that he's also stepped up on the rebounding end. He got 6 rebounds. He even got a block because the block party was out in full force for this game. So, yeah, there's a lot to be happy about for what Tyrese Proctor is doing. He had a great week. Let's hope it continues.
Yeah, hey, another guard I wanted to mention who had a really, really good game. And this may be the most significant thing that happened in this game is Caleb Foster. Mm-hmm. And, he hit his first 3-pointer, and I was like, please, can this please be the start? Can this be the thing that, really gets it going for Caleb? Because he hasn't hit his first 3-pointer in a game in a while. He had a nice drive just a couple moments later. And then in the second half, he had a little stretch where he really took over. That second half may have been his best half of the season. He played big minutes. He was taking the ball to the cup. He ends with 9 points in the game. He only had 11 total points in his previous 4 games. And I just thought it was great to see Caleb playing with confidence again. Great to see him playing assertively, playing a larger role, a much larger role than he has lately. I mean, honestly, Caleb, he gets a little run in the first half, gets some early in the second half, but then for the most part, you were only then seeing him at the very end of the game if Duke had a big lead, and Duke almost always has a big lead at the end of the game. But, you weren't seeing a lot of Caleb integrated with the rest of the rotation. And in this game, he was. Now, I wonder a little tiny bit how much of it is maybe Caleb playing better and how much of it might be Sewell versus Shire. I mean, there are a couple rotation things that were different in this game than they have been in recent games. And I don't know how much of it, again, is like something that will last, or how much of it may have just been Sewell choosing to go a different direction, which is perfect. He's head coach of the game. That's perfectly fine. But part of Foster playing more was we didn't see nearly as much of Isaiah Evans. Isaiah barely got off the bench. In the second half, he didn't get off the bench at all till the final 3 minutes. He didn't play the first 17 minutes of the second half. He played 7 minutes in the first half. It's fine. It's not like Isaiah is falling out of the rotation or anything, but there is a reality here of available minutes in the backcourt. And if Caleb's playing better and Caleb's going to get, 19, 20 minutes in the game, then that could, impact Isaiah's minutes played. And the last minutes guy I wanted to mention, and then I'll let you get in really quick. I did want to mention that we got another very assertive, very good game from Mason Gillis, one of his best games in a Duke uniform. He played really well against Virginia Tech also. We got a 17-point week out of Mason Gillis in these two games. 17 points out of one of our really deep, probably our ninth guy. For us to get 17 points out of that guy, I mean, come on. That shows you what a good week Duke had.
I'm glad you mentioned Foster and Gillis in the same part because I was going to do the same thing because I thought both had really good games. Mason Gillis, again, he hit a three. He, was able to assert himself inside, especially on defense. He was doing well. 3 rebounds and an assist. He just felt like he was.
He had a yam. Did you see the Duke? He had a yam, and the Duke it's bonkers.
It's a play of the game candidate. We'll see which one I end up going with. But because I have a lot written down here. But I thought he did well in that regard. And with Foster, it's very funny. My godson, when we went, I took my godson to the game against Virginia Tech, and before the game, he wore his number 1 jersey, and he was telling my best friend, like, I think Caleb Foster needs to play better if Duke wants to win. And my response to that was, get him on the podcast because that's
brilliant analysis there, baby.
He said it felt like I was listening to you speak through him. But Caleb Foster, he didn't do as well against Virginia Tech, but today, or I guess yesterday, against SMU, he did
keep doing
very
that,
well.
By the way.
Look, there's a snowstorm coming. Time is a social construct. But I think with Caleb Foster, the effect that he has on the rest of the team when he does well is palpable, right? You can see the bench getting ever more giddy, right? You can see the guys on the floor having a little extra bounce because for them, they're like, if Caleb Foster's doing well, bruh, you're in for a long day because everybody is going off. And it let me tell you, matriculated all the way down, right? Patrick Gongba had a terrible game. We talked about how he had a trillion, right? Or he had a foul, against Virginia Tech. 2 points, 2 rebounds, and a block. Cameron Sheffield got off the bench. A rebound and assist. Neil Begovic got a rebound. Darren Harris missed his only jumper, but again, looked fluid in the flow of the offense and everything. Everyone on the floor that played contributed in some way to this game. And it started from the top with Cooper Flagg and Manman and Tyrese Proctor, and it flowed all the way down to the guys at the end of the bench who don't get a lot of run. I think that's incredible to do that on the road, where you have a point where this is a box score you see at home, Jason. You don't see that on the road, where you get guys all the way down to the end of the bench and they're coming in and they're doing stuff that would make Cameron go absolutely nuts. But I really enjoyed the fact that everybody off the bench came in and did hard. We outscored SMU in bench points 23-12, but it felt like when the second unit came in, the second unit was who helped us sustain the tide and even took a few points from SMU before they came back in, before the Stars came back in and finished them off.
By the way, we haven't mentioned the name Con Knipple at all, other than talking about his lob. He goes 3 of 8 on threes, had another 14 points scored. Con just kind of quietly scoring teen points. We're not even talking about him.
And we barely mentioned Sion James, but I have to reiterate the fact you mentioned it. He had 7 assists in the first half, 8 overall. Also had 6 points and 3 rebounds. Just again, he like the last game he had he had a double in rebounds, and this time around he's passing the ball all over the place and getting points. Like that's
you never.
I mean,
that the versatility of this team. We've talked about that a lot. The versatility of this game on offense and defense. Because by the way, I did mention Sion. Folks, if you still have this game on tape, go back and watch Sion's defense on Boopy Miller. Boopy's like, can we get me a screen? Let me get someone else.
Like somebody sub for him, not for me. Sub for him.
Exactly right. Okay. All right. I think that's going to do it with the good. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we got to talk about the bad. A little bit of stuff in the bad. CW, we're coming for you in the bad. And we got a player of the game and a player of the week. No, I'm sorry. We have a play of the game and a player of the week. Tons of stuff still coming on the DBR podcast. Stick with us through the break.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Donald, we're back from the break. It's time to talk about the bad, and we got emails. We got a number of emails from people who said, can we put the CW in the bad? Yes, we can. Yes, we most assuredly can. The broadcast was, well, frozen screen, black screen, radio. What you doing, C-Dub? It was, and of course it came just as Duke was sort of stretching the lead out. At least, God, if it had been like a 2-point game, I would have been really freaking out. But I was just like, what's happening here? Running promos for Duke University instead of the game. Can we please watch the game? They were bad. They were just not very good. The camera work also, the CW camera work was terrible. We completely missed a Tyrese Proctor 3-pointer off an inbounds play. Like, we didn't see it at all. They had to show it to us on replay because they were busy showing Andy Enfield looking intense on the sidelines. Like, what are you doing? If the ref's about to hand the ball to the guy, make sure you have the camera on the floor. And Dave Kerman, the K-Man, he wrote to us and he said the graphics that the CW was using reminded him of NBA 2K from 20 years ago. He said, can we please get Raycom Jefferson Pilot back on the job? Oh my God.
We didn't even have the G-Man. The G-Man was doing the Wake Forest game. It was a Wake Forest NC State before that. So we didn't even get the G-Man out of this. Like, and I love the G-Man. Like, he's like easily one of the most underrated broadcasters out there.
Agreed.
And the fact that we don't get him enough is a travesty because he's always on the Jefferson Pilot Raycom games that we were barely on back in the day, like when they kind of expanded the schedule because ESPN wanted it so much. But Jason, the CW thing was so funny to me because as you probably know, I have a box. It's not full cable. If you know, you know. But I have the ability to get 20,000 channels, of which like 90 of them are all the CW affiliates nationwide. So I can watch it on any one I want. So I said, I'll watch it on the Raleigh-Durham one because that's going to obviously have it. So when it froze, I was like, oh, my box is acting up again. Okay, I'll just switch to the Greensboro one. Nope, that's frozen too in the same spot. Oh no. Like, I'm like, the box is messed up. So I'm sitting there clicking on every single channel, like, okay, this game's going on. This one's fine. CW Nevada is showing like, NCIS. Okay, fine. That's not the basketball game. CW in Phoenix is showing another random game that is not the Duke game. So this is not a nationwide thing. All these CW feels like, I want to show this other thing. So for like 2 minutes, I'm sitting here freaking out and I'm about to be like, okay, I have to figure out how to get the CW on my computer, on my phone or something. And then sure enough, then it came back and I see a Duke commercial. So I'm like, okay, which I guess everyone got. Cause again, I clicked on all the affiliates and they all had the Duke commercial. And then I was like, okay, it went to commercial. Good. I didn't miss anything. Like maybe it just went to a TV timeout. And then I clicked back to the Raleigh-Durham CW and all of a sudden it's like, 30 seconds into a game. I'm like, hold on. Did we just miss like 5 minutes of game time for this?
Yes, we did almost.
That's
about 2 minutes of game time, I think. But anyway.
But like, again, it took, when you're in the heat of things, like, again, time is a social construct. You're just sitting there like, the theory of relativity, right? You touch a hot plate, a second can feel like an hour. That's what this was. And so we're just sitting, I'm sure everyone was kind of like, what are we doing here? But the CW, you got to have that prepared. You got to have like a technical difficulties thing pop up or something. But to do this in real time, like you said, if this was a closer game, we would have gotten way more emails. And in fact, we got like 20 emails about the CW. Should tell you that everyone experienced this problem nationwide, that it was a big problem, and that the CW needs to figure that out. This is like the Netflix thing with football. You can't do this when a bunch of people are watching, when your major product, right, that is Duke basketball, this is the biggest games you'll have all seasons when you have Duke on your screen. And if you mess up, we will tell you about it because the last thing we need is to be in a close game and have that be the determining factor where we can't see action because you're doing whatever it was you were doing.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to some legitimate bad things in this game because there are some that we should talk about. Malik Brown only plays 12 minutes in this contest. He had some real trouble with that Turkish big guy, Yediglulu, or whatever his name was. Malik seemed like that wasn't a good matchup for him. I also noticed that Malik, he wasn't getting his hands on balls the way he usually does. There weren't as many deflections as we usually see. You may recall, like Malik was playing 20 plus minutes per game, like 25 against Auburn, 29 against Louisville. His minutes have dropped lately. I want to point something out. Part of that, I think, is that the team wants to get Man more experience, and Man's been playing really well, and the team's been looking for Man more and more. So I get that, but part of it is also this. You remember he had a toe injury that held him out of the Incarnate Word game. I've heard that it's still lingering a bit, and that he is not fully healthy at the moment. Now he's going to get there. It's not something that the team expects to be a problem all season or anything like that. And it's also not something where they say, "Oh, give him a game off, and he'll be able to get fully there." I think it's just something that's going to linger. It's just sort of the nature of this toe injury. But he's not fully healthy, and that's one reason I think we're not seeing the Malik Brown that was an absolute terror against teams like Louisville and Auburn, Arizona. There were several games where he was just incredible. But if we're doing good and bad, Malik wasn't himself in this game.
Yeah, and still funny enough, he was still getting, in my opinion, he was getting hands in pass lanes, just not to the level that he has been.
Right, it wasn't otherworldly. Yeah.
Where I feel like every other pass he was deflecting it out of bounds or deflecting into the hands of one of our players going the other way. I also think, Jason, as you kind of alluded to, it's partly the emergence of Man on offense, right? And the fact that on defense, it's you're taking some to get something off to get another, right? You're taking the deflections of Malik Brown off the court to get the blocking and shot altering ability of Man. So it's six in one hand, half dozen in the other in a way. But yes, I think, the fact that we're in the meat of the ACC season, that we're going to be playing 2 to 3 games a week, hopefully the toe just maintains, right? And it doesn't get any worse. And he can be able to maintain that level, whatever pain threshold there is, to be able to play and continue to be back. Because we need a healthy Malik Brown on the floor throughout the rest of the season. Jason, there's a couple things that I had in the bad that were, again, minor things, not real causes for concern. The first one is we had 6 turnovers in the second half. You mentioned the 12 assists on 1 turnover in the first. We had 6 in the second half. We, of course, just cleaned it up a little bit. We're still well under our threshold of 12 for a game.
Cooper had a little flurry where he probably had like 2 or 3 turnovers in about 4 or 5 possessions. It was not
3. He had all 3 of his turnovers in 3 possessions. One was where a guy came up from behind and snapped it away from him. He had no idea he was there because he had 2 guys in front of him. So I'm not really worried about that. Again, things that we can clean up, and I'm sure he will be upset at. But the other thing that I think that's a little bit more that might start to become a trend. We've seen this in games past. We won the rebounding battle, but SMU had 21 offensive rebounds. They had more offensive rebounds. Yeah, they had more offensive rebounds than they had defensive. And I think it was a couple games ago where another team, I'm blanking on who it is, so I won't say who it was, had like 15 offensive rebounds. And so you're starting to see where teams, because they're missing a lot of shots, they're able to get second chance points off of that. SMU, the fact that they had 15 second chance points in a game where they scored only 62 is something where you don't want that to start to become a trend. So that's where we need to limit. For against these better teams, we need to have the opportunity where if we're going to force them to miss a shot, that it's only one shot that they miss, and then we get the ball and go the other way and limit the number of chances they have, the number of bites they have at the apple in every single possession.
You have very good memory, sir. It was George Mason that had 20
George
offensive
Mason.
rebounds against Duke. And by the way, I didn't have that memorized. While Donald was talking, I went and I looked at the old
I
box
appreciate
score.
you for that. Yeah.
But yeah, George Mason was the team that had the big offensive rebounding game against Duke. But yeah, you're correct. I absolutely had identified offensive rebounds as a place where I was, somewhat concerned about what happened in this game. Last thing I have in the bad is this. I want to give full props to Kario Okendo of SMU, who had one of the most nasty, mean, just in your face slam dunks that I've seen in a long time. And he did it. He came down the lane and did it to Manman. Now, they were down 20. There was only 6 minutes left. In the realm of meaningless plays, it was a pretty damn meaningless play. But I did want to tip my hat to him because that was a wow kind of play. But there was also this. Go back and watch that play. Right after it happens, because Man got posterized in a big old way. Right after it happened, Cooper Flagg goes right up to Man and tells him, dude, shrug it off. Don't worry about it. I mean, I can't read his lips. I don't know what exact words he used, and it may have been more colorful than what I just said. But he makes sure that his big buddy is okay and wouldn't be distracted by that play. And you were talking earlier about captains. Great leadership there from Cooper. And I see Cooper being a guy who's taking a leadership role on this team more and more. I think that the reason that Duke hasn't named captains is that between Mason Gillis and Sion James and Tyrese Proctor and Cooper Flagg, they're just a whole lot of guys. Like, are you going to name four? But there are a whole lot of guys who have the maturity. And I'm not saying maturity in terms of chronological age, but mental maturity to be leaders and to tell their teammates what they need to hear and what they need to know. I should have mentioned Malik Brown. I believe Malik Brown is that way as well. This is a team that just has a lot of different guys who can take that kind of leadership role. And I think John Shire's decided no captain because I don't need to designate someone for that role because there's so many different guys who can do it at any different time. Oh yeah, this is supposed to be the bad. I'm saying good.
The bad was we let Oquendo posterize Man, and there wasn't any immediate repercussions other than winning the game. The next time that happens, I'm sure Cooper's going to turn to Man and go, "Hey Man, remember that play we did, a couple of plays ago with the pick and roll and yeah, let's do that again." And you can read that part because there'll be times where you'll get into a moment where you just did that to my teammate. Okay, watch this, and we'll set up a backyard play where somebody also gets to posterize the other team. So that give and take is there, but yeah, it goes back to leadership. There's from top to bottom. There's a lot, like if you think about it, even look at Neil Begovic and Cameron Sheffield and Spencer Hubbard. We've had captains who don't play, who exert that leadership qualities, and those guys can do that as well.
Let's get to our play of the game if you're cool with that.
Yeah,
I'll let you go ahead, go first. I want to hear which one you got because I feel like there aren't obvious choices this game.
Yeah, there was a few that I had written down, but I'm gonna go with my first one, my gut. 16-21 in the mark in the first half, so like 4 minutes into the game, that man volleyball swat of Yedogolu. That set the tone. That if there's a tone to be set, it was I'm so just disenamored with your abilities to play basketball that I'm going to throw this ball down the court. I'm going to make you reset in your own house. And they never reset.
I love it. That's a good call. Mine is I had a few different contenders, and I wanted to really quickly shout out. There was a great play that Tyrese Proctor made in the first half with about 6 minutes left, where he drove in the lane. He could have easily taken a short jumper, and instead he sort of left it for Man for an easy layup, which I just thought was a beautiful play. It started with Caleb Foster bringing the ball up the court and finding Tyrese. It was just a beautiful. Everything about it was a beautiful play. It was the epitome of easy basketball. Everything about it came easy because Duke made the smart play. But my play of the game is with about 16 minutes left in the game, Cooper Flagg gets a rebound. He spins around one guy who thinks he's about to take it from Cooper. He then split a couple other guys, and then he kind of lost the ball. It was like great dribbling, unbelievable body control. And then he kind of lost the ball. We recovered. And a couple seconds later, because of sort of the chaos of Cooper going through like three different guys, Cooper found himself all alone, no one near him. and Tyrese Proctor found him for the wide open 3-pointer that should have been a 4-point play. He was fouled on that play. There's little question about it. He went to the ground and he said to the refs when he got up, he's like, "Hey, my arm, you see this arm? This arm got knocked, baby." And I hit the 3-pointer anyway. But I called that my play of the game because it was just Cooper doing Cooper things. There are probably about 10 other times that Cooper did Cooper things in this game.
Yes.
But that was one that just stuck out to me. I was like, man, how is a guy his size, his skill, his ability to finish on the inside, have a handle like that, have shooting touch like that? It's like you designed him in a lab or something. And oh yeah, he's just an absurd, ridiculous, out of this world defender. With that, Donald, let's get to player of the week. I wonder who we're picking.
Who could that be? You want me to say the stat line, or you want to do it? Because I think we got the same stats.
I tell you what, why don't you do a stat and then I'll do a stat?
Okay. He was 16 for 25 from the floor this week, 64%.
Well, I'm just going to do 48 points on the week.
He was 4 for 6 from 3. That's 66.7%.
He hit 60% of his twos.
He was 100% from the line, 12 for 12.
He had 14 rebounds.
I'm sorry, Jason, that was 17 rebounds.
Oh, 17. Sorry. Yes, you're right. I miswrote it. Yeah, 17 rebounds. Yes, sorry.
Oh, but Jason, he also had 3 blocks.
He had 5 steals.
Oh, that was a defense. Oh, we're talking offense too. He had 9 assists.
I mean, come on.
What? Who is this?
What are we
creature?
even doing here? Oh.
Jason, it's funny. Last week you were like you went out of your way to pick somebody else. I think I forgot who you picked, but you went out of your way to pick somebody else because you're like, hey, I can't give the Cooper Flagg every week. And counterpoint, if he keeps doing weeks like this, you absolutely can. It's no diss to anybody else in the team because I thought the whole team had a very good week. We had a lot of guys who in normal weeks we could have definitely considered, but when Cooper puts up numbers like this, it's hard to take it away from him because we're just so used to him doing this at this point.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up on this edition of the DBR podcast. Now, I know you're probably thinking to yourself, wait a second, wasn't there a football bowl game? Yes, we're going to have some comments about the football bowl game. We're going to have an episode in your feed in the next 24 hours. We're going to preview that game against Pitt, big game. We're going to talk about the football bowl game. There's a little bit of other football news we're going to get to. Tons of stuff happening here on the DBR podcast, but we didn't want to have you here for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean, it's the last game of the football season, and we want to give it its just due, right? We want to recap it like we do back at the beginning and not just be like, oh, by the way, there was a bowl game. There's what happened. God bless you. Good night. We want to make sure we take the time to talk about, because there's, despite the score that I'm sure all of you know, there was a lot to take from this game, both in a positive and a negative way.
Absolutely. Very much so. So we're going to get to that. Again, check your feed in the next hour, next day, next 24 hours. and you'll see all that we have prepared for you. Big game coming up against Pittsburgh. Until then, he is Donald. I'm Jason. And here's the Duke Band playing us out and taking us home.
Here's the funny thing is DC, as you probably know, gets a lot of threats of snowstorms, and
sure,
very rarely does it actually follow through inside the district. So they're saying 8 to 12 inches of snow. We've had this happen in the past where everyone around us gets 8 to 12 inches of snow and we get a dusting. So I'm fully expecting a dud, but you still have to prepare as if. So
I totally get it.
Yeah.
What's preparing mean for you?
Last night I made chili. So that was excellent. One of my better batches of chili. I did a turkey chili this time because they didn't have, usually combine turkey with ground beef, but they didn't have any ground beef at the store, or at least any good. So I went with turkey and it turned out excellent. And then just like random things like I have to drop off some late Christmas presents and to some of my friends' kids and things like that. Run a couple of random things where I'm like, okay, if I can get this now, I don't have to worry about it if it does snow. It'll take several days for us to get Doug out of it. So it's like little random things where I'm like, if I get this now, I don't have to worry about trying to get it by walking through a foot of snow that has not been cleared off the sidewalk.
From everything I've seen, it appears that though these storms are going to affect a lot of the country, they aren't going to extend down to Atlanta, which is good because, frankly, if we get half an inch, the entire city shuts down.
Right, right. And like I know Raleigh was preparing for the same storm, and then all of a sudden they're kind of like, we'll probably get like flurries and it'll be cold. Yeah, you guys are getting the cold, but like thankfully not the precipitation.